So hand weeding. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. But it is a necessary job, and there's some ways that you can make it a little bit easier that I found. First of all, tools. Knee pads are nice if you know you're going to be on your knees for a while. They have little foam pads you can carry around with you in place as you work an area. And tools. There's a number of different weeding tools, but I really like this tool. This is a sickle. I use 3 different sizes of sickles. This is the shortest size and my preferred tool for hand weeding. It's a little more stout, a little more thick on the blade, less likely to break. The other 2 that I use are a little bit longer. It's probably about 2-3 inches longer, the next size up, and that's good for cutting like grasses and things like that. And then the next one is even longer. It's maybe like another 5 inches, the cutting blade. That longer one I use for more like heliconias, softer plants that I need to cut, or if I need to reach into a big tuft of guinea grass to cut the long stalks of the guinea grass, I'll use that type of tool, but it tends to be more fragile, so it tends to break, that type of tool. So this is actually my preferred method. Very stout, very strong. I can really put a lot of effort in it. There's a couple different weeds here that I deal with here on this Aina, and I just kind of wanted to talk about them. So in my experiences and all the years of weeding the different agricultural jobs I've been in, one rule has stuck with me, and the rule is 1/4 inch, don't pinch. Meaning, if the plant's shorter than 1/4 inch, don't even try to weed it. Yeah, there's other methods of weeding that, but hand weeding it, don't even try. Usually, more often than not, what happens is you'll end up ripping the top off and not getting the roots out of the ground. And that's mostly pruning. You're pruning the plant, unless it's a very young plant. If it's a seedling, that could kill it. But other weeds, you're just pruning it, which is going to make that plant a stronger plant. The root system will become stronger, it'll be harder to pull. So timing, the time in which you pull the plant during its growth stage can really help. Right now I have a lot of albizia plants, trees, baby trees coming up, and they come up relatively easily. You can pull them out of the ground, and most of the time you get the roots, and they won't be a problem. However, in some areas there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of them. That's one of the reasons that tree, the albizia tree, is an invasive tree. So with that tree, what I'll do is I will either come in and use the fire method and torch an area that is just filled with albizas, and it'll cook the stalks, stems enough that they will all die. I will also wait until they get a little bit longer, just because, like I mentioned, there's a lot of bending knee time that you spend weeding. So if they get a little bit taller, about the 1 foot range, you just need to bend over a little bit to rip them out of the ground, and they come out relatively easily. That plant does grow 10 feet a year, so it is a plant that you do want to get out of the ground when it's small. If you don't, and you say, oh, I'll get to it later, Bombay, I'll get to it, and then Bombay ends up being a year later. Now you got a 10-foot tree with a pretty extensive root system, and it can be a lot more work, shovel work, and you wait even longer, and then you need chainsaw and equipment, and it can become a nightmare real fast if you don't stay on it. So some of the other weeds that I have around here is a grass, a very tall grass called Job's Tear. Some people use this seed for jewelry. And it's actually not a bad plant. It's actually a pretty good material for composting. It's kind of hollow inside, which can be a problem if you use a cane knife and cut it, because it leaves a very sharp edge, almost like a hypodermic needle. It's hollow inside, and the edge that you cut can be very sharp, so you have to watch your hands with that. But we have the hono grass here. We have a couple others, clover type weed, and this little crawling plant. I should know its name. I suspect it's a medicinal plant, but this plant I have seen, it's a ground cover really took over this area when it was intended to. So being observant to the growth habits of these plants and which plants are more vigorous is a good thing. I definitely want to get these guys out of here. So this sickle tool is really good because you can just poke the tip into the ground at the base of the weed that you want to remove. So on this ground cover, I'm looking for the center. It has all these arms coming out, and it's trying to root throughout the arms. That's what ground covers do for the most part. And I just want to find the center where the taproot is. And I'll just dig this thing in the ground at the base of the plant once I found that taproot, and I will just cut it beneath the surface of the soil and then excavate that plant. And that works for most of the plants. Like I mentioned, a lot of those ground covers, as they creep along the ground, they produce roots out of their nodes where they're touching the ground. This is the hono grass, and you can see the roots coming out, and this thing will take over really quickly. Some of these other weeds, like this Jove's here, when it's really young, when it's really small, much like the guinea grass, it can be really hard to extract it. The guinea grass in particular will rip at the base, and you basically prune the guinea grass. So you have all these little shoots that you've pruned, and they're going to come back even stronger. So sometimes it's a good idea just to wait until they get a little bigger, and then quick zip, and it's out. And this is one that I try to pull out when it's younger for this reason, because it does take a lot of cutting, this plant, to cut through that dense root system. So this sickle tool, if you're in an area that has relatively young plants, I will just, here's a piece of guinea grass, and that's about the size. I wouldn't want to try to pull it too much smaller than that. With the sickle tool, if you're in an area that has kind of a uniform aged plant, weeds, I'll just basically take this thing and travel across the surface, skinning just beneath the surface, and just cutting, severing all the roots of the plants in that area that I don't want growing there, and grabbing them as I'm cutting the underside, and then clearing the area. And that's the best way I've found for weeding. It's a necessary evil, and I actually find it kind of therapeutic. There's instant gratification in seeing what you've done and cleaning an area. Some people have mentioned aggression release. You have some frustration going on in your life, go out and pookie some weeds. Right here I've got some spearmint growing. I have quite a bit of it growing. That plant can become invasive just like the hono, so you got to kind of keep an eye on it. I love the smell of spearmint. I'm making teas, putting it in my water. But another reason the spearmint is here is another maintenance issue, and it has to do with pests. We have a horrific ant problem here. We have so many different varieties of ants. We live on an ant hill, this island with its lava and its lava tubes and all the pukas in the ground. The ants can get down into the core of the island, and we could never touch their nests. So the ants are going to be here for a long time. Very serious problem. If you've ever hiked out to Hanakapiai and seen those little reddish ants, that ant, it might be called the pharaoh ant, is a troublemaker because he does not take the poison baits. I really don't like chemicals and poisons, but when it comes to the ants, I understand why people would use them, because there's not much you can do. But I'll talk about a couple things that you can do. And spearmint is one of them. Apparently, some of the varieties of ants do not like the roots of the spearmint. So I actually plant spearmint around all of my trees. The ants like to farm other animals. Scale, I think, is one of them. The white mealy bug might be another one. But what they do is they carry these plants, these other bugs around, and they place them on the root system of your trees. Mamaki is a wonderful example of that. And the mamaki hates to have its roots traumatized. I've heard a number of stories of people having beautiful mamaki trees, and next thing you know, the thing starts dying. Next year, it's dead. And I suspect what's happened, or what did happen, was that the ants had moved in underground, and you don't see any of this activity. And they're starting to farm their scale. And what they do is the ants pull the dirt away from the roots of the tree. And that ends up killing the roots. The roots need air, but they don't need that much air, that they're not in contact with soil. And the ants are removing that so they can work in the area and put their scales on the roots so that they can suck out whatever they're doing. And I suspect that's the reason why a lot of these mamaki trees have died that people have had in their yards. So the spearmint helps deter some varieties of ants. I have seen ants in spearmint pots in the roots, so it does not work on all ants, but it is a deterrent. Another deterrent is utilizing the fire method to contain weeds or to burn off weeds. If you're using fire around your plants regularly, the ants will leave the area. They will not hang out. So I've noticed that in areas that I use the propane torch and torch rings around plants to keep the weeds back, the ants don't set up around those plants. It's just too dangerous for them. Another thing you can do is you can constantly disturb the nest. I watch ants. If I see ants, I will watch them, and I follow them. I find out where their home is at. And if it's an ant that's doing damage or is causing problems in my area that I'm growing in, I will disturb the nest. And continually disturbing the nest will force those ants to find a different place to set up shop. So those are just a couple methods, other than using chemical poisons and things like that.